everyone, it's Chubby.
And I'm Vanessa, and we
are No Filters, No Fears podcast. And today's episode is a level 2 elephant. Hello, Fearless fam. Well, today is the first day of Women's History Month. So Vanessa and I thought to honor 10 African American women in history who changed the world in one way or another. But you guessed it, today is a Memory Monday historical edition. And the first one in our list would be Mary Ann Chad Carey. She was an American-Canadian anti-slavery activist, journalist, publisher, teacher, and lawyer. She was the first Black woman publisher in North America and the first woman publisher in Canada. She was the first African-American woman to edit a weekly newspaper, graduate from law school, vote in a national election. Next on our list is Ruby Bridges. She was an American civil rights activist. She was the first African American child to desegregate the all-white William Frantz Elementary School in Louisiana during the New Orleans school desegregation crisis on November 14, 1960. And that was barely 60 years ago today, which is crazy to think that it happened just, and people try to disconnect from it thinking it was like over 100 or 200 years ago when it was just barely 60 years ago. Up next is Althea Gibson. She was an American tennis player and professional golfer and one of the first Black athletes to cross color line of international tennis. In 1956, she became the first African American to win a Grand Slam title. She basically paved the way for future female athletes of color such as Venus and Serena Williams and Naomi Osaka to be able to play. Up next is Ann Cooper. Ann Cooper was an American author, educator, socialist, speaker, Black liberation activist, and one of the most prominent African-American scholars in the United States. In 1892, she published her first book and manifesto, A Voice from the South. She's the only woman of color ever to be quoted in the current edition of the U.S. passport. It reads, "The curse of freedom is not the cause of a race or a sect, a party or a class. It is the cause of humankind, the very birthright of humanity." So if you own a U.S. passport, go to the last pages with quotes on it and you will see her there. I thought that was a cool thing because I've never read my passport, but I thought this was a cool little fact that she is quoted there. And last on my list is Claudette Colvin. She is a pioneer of the 1950s civil rights movement and retired nurse aide. On March 2nd, 1955, she was arrested at the age of 15 in Montgomery, Alabama, for refusing to give up her seat to a white woman on a crowded segregated bus. Granted, although we've all heard the story of Rosa Parks refusing to give up her seat, most of us didn't know that Colvin did the same thing 9 months before Parks did. But she was only 15 at the time and was one of the first Black activists to openly challenge the law.
Hey, Fearless fam. So today's topic is all about the amazing Black women who have done amazing things throughout history that we still see and get to reap the benefits of today. Not just women, not just Black women, all of us, because of these people, get to enjoy a lot of things and get to have a lot of the experiences that we have nowadays. My 5 list is as follows. It starts with the one and only Mahalia Jackson, which was an American gospel singer, known and revered as the Queen of Gospel. And the story that sticks out to me most, and the reason that I chose to mention her for this particular topic today, is because of her association to one Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, Mahalia Jackson in her own right was a sensational singer made famous by her amazing ability to transcend barriers of music, having been inspired by quote unquote secular artists like Ma Rainey. But we all know how big the I Have a Dream speech is, how significant it has been throughout history. A voice of hope, right? A speech that moved so many. But on that day in 1963, during the March on Washington, Martin Luther King had a completely different speech ready to rumble. And Mahalia Jackson was sitting to his left, I believe. Now, there weren't many women up there. So to begin with, that is phenomenal. That of the few female representation that was up there that day, she was by his side because they were good friends. And as he's reading his speech and going through it, she stops him and says, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And gave to all of us, it motivated him to give all of us that beautiful speech that has served as a reminder to keep pushing forward for equal rights for us all. Mahalia Jackson, my number one pick. Now, we know that as an actor and an arts advocate, I can't have just one person related to the arts. I already talked to you about Mahalia Jackson, but now I want to talk to you about Raven Wilkinson. Raven Wilkinson was a ballerina, and she was ahead of her time. Because of Raven Wilkinson, we are able to have Misty Copeland, which was the first African-American principal dancer in the American Ballet Theater Company. And Raven Wilkinson was actually Misty Copeland's mentor and one of her inspirations throughout her career. But before Misty Copeland was moving and shaking the world, Raven Wilkinson was dancing with major theater companies. And she danced with the likes of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, something that in her time in the 1940s was not happening. And she changed the game and paved the way for Black women and Black artists in the dance world to be seen and part of not just small companies, but major touring companies and major companies of cities that are known for their contributions to the dance arts. So bravo to Raven Wilkinson. All right, for this next one, I want to take us back to our episode about the Stonewall Inn riots. And I want to talk to you about another strong Black woman who made incredible strides that so many get to reap the benefits of today. Marsha P Johnson was an amazing figure of history and was pivotal during the Stonewall Inn riots alongside Sylvia Rivera. They started a lot of the uprisings and they were very vocal during that time. Now, Marsha P Johnson is a transgender woman and self-proclaimed drag queen and really felt strongly about sharing the need for equality and equal treatment and was seeing the devastation of consistently finding the body of dead, gay, or transgender men and women in New York. And she really fought hard and she would give speeches. And sadly, during her life was very mistreated, was homeless much of the time. Even so to the point that got together with other activists, including Sylvia Rivera, and founded STAR in New York, the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries. And they supported young transgender people and gave them a home and food and shelter, things that were necessary in that time. Unfortunately, Marsha P. Johnson was not able to enjoy her hard work in those times. And she was treated horribly, even by her own community, even by the LGBTQ plus community, even then. But because of Marsha P Johnson and her speeches and her dedication to the movement, so much of what we know now to be LGBTQ plus rights come, of course, we all know instigated, the catalyst was the Stonewall and riots, but pride parades, all of these things. Marsha P Johnson was at the front of that first parade along with Sylvia Rivera. So it is important that we remember, not just for the LGBTQ plus community, but for the awareness that it brings all of us to take care of our transgender brothers and sisters, that we need to be awake and aware. And my hat's off to Marsha P Johnson. There is a special a documentary of her life on Netflix. Now, it's called The Death of Martha P. Johnson, and it's because, unfortunately, for someone who lived their life trying to do for others and raise awareness and move mountains and get equal rights for their community, she was met with a very violent and very tragic end. Her body was found in the Hudson River and ruled a suicide, which many believe was not a suicide at all, but a murder. And these are the kinds of things that in that time she was fighting against. Nowadays, there's much more awareness of who she was and the great things that she did. And I hope that we can remember, acknowledge, and celebrate Marsha P. Johnson. Up next is Mary McLeod Bethune, and I really hope I pronounced her name right, because this phenomenal educator and civil rights advocate was the first woman to start a historical Black college and university. In 1904, she founded the Daytona Educational and Industrial School for Negro Girls, which is now known as the Bethune-Cookman University, and it's right here in Florida. Now, mind you, this was huge for so many reasons. Not only was she the first woman to do this, she was the first Black woman to do this, and it was continuing to give hope and education to other Black women to move forward. And we've all benefited from these things. She was also a prominent member of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Black Cabinet in 1932, and this was due to the fact that she founded the National Council of Negro Women, always uplifting the female voice and always making sure that Black women's voices were heard and had an opportunity to progress. Bravo, Mary McLeod Bethune. So maybe 3 months ago, a Netflix movie. Yes, I know, we bring them up a lot. They need to become a sponsor for us. Chewy and I have discussed this. But there was a wonderful movie on Netflix about Madam C.J. Walker, which is my next person that I want to discuss. Madam C.J. Walker is recorded in the Guinness Book World Records as the first self-made female millionaire. Okay? Now, in general, I've always believed that we don't need to add certain things, like the first Latina this, the first Black that, but those things are massively significant. But not only was she the first Black woman to achieve that kind of status, she was the first woman, period. So, hell yeah. And this was in a time where that was just simply unheard of. And I highly encourage everyone to watch that movie on Netflix about Madam C.J. Walker and her life and her experiences, because she faced a lot of obstacles and she persevered nonetheless. The first of which was the loss of her hair. And she met a person who gave her a product to put in her hair that helped her grow back beautiful and strong, and made her feel more confident. And in recognizing what that product did for her, she offered kind of like Avon style to go on and sell this product for her. And the woman who introduced her to the product and put it on her denied it to her to sell it. She wasn't even asking to do it on her own. She wanted to do it for her out of gratitude, and was denied this. because she was too dark and it was going to give the wrong impression. And, colorism, we know, is a very real thing. And even then it was, because it was a means of survival and a way to progress. Now, Madam C.J. Walker did not take that lying down and made her own formula that smelled better and did the same thing and gave opportunities to women that looked like her. And not just women that looked like her, but women that had been cast aside or were having a difficult time and were left by husbands. She made a fleet of women who were intent on bettering themselves and standing on their own 2 feet. And it was amazing for that time. And nobody could believe it. And these are times where men are coming together and having discussions, about how to move forward. And this woman stood up amongst them and said, it doesn't just have to be about you men. Women can be included in this narrative. And she purchased her own factories and she worked out of homes. She purchased her own homes. It's an amazing film to watch. And also just so much information is known about Madam C.J. Walker. It's worth a read. Her products still exist to this day and still provide that kind of comfort, that self-esteem that comes with, allowing yourself to look the way you want to look and let that be part of the full package that you present to the world.
Today's episode has a Chupi's Book Corner. I have 4 books that I can't wait to share with you all. And all the books that I found are from African American women who are sharing their journey from where they come from and from who they are. The first one being Anna Cooper, A Voice from the South, published in 1892. A Voice from the South is a manifesto of African Americans' views on women and African Americans of the South after being born and raised there. Please note that Anna Cooper was born a slave and she became the 4th African American woman to earn a doctoral degree. The second book is from Angela Davis, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. This is a collection of essays, interviews, and speeches examining today's issues. The third book is from Ida Wells, published in 1895, called The Red Record. She's an accomplished journalist who published an array of articles and texts about lynching and other violence against Black people during the Reconstruction and early Jim Crow era. And my final book on Chupi's Book Corner is called Ain't I a Woman by Bells Hooks. She examines the effects of racism and sexism on Black women, the civil rights movement, and feminist movements from the suffrage to the 1970s. I hope you guys liked all the books on Chupi's Book Corner today. You could find all these books on Google, and if you're an Amazon user, you could find them in Amazon. These are great reads. These are all non-fiction books.
Today I have 2 quotes for you guys during Quoted Quotes with Vane. And the first is, sometimes I feel discriminated against, but it does not make me angry. It merely astonishes me. How can anyone deny themselves the pleasure of my company? It's beyond me. Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston was a writer and anthropologist in the early 1900s, and she wrote about the racism and struggles that she saw during that time. And she was also just an incredible writer who wrote novels that still get read today and are even used as textbooks sometimes. And I find that really interesting that she saw it that way instead of choosing to be bogged down by it. She said, it's a shame that you don't want to get to know me, because she was truly a brilliant woman that went on to create works that educated so many different communities and uplifted the voice of her own community. And then I have a quote here. Here we go. Stand for something, or you will fall for anything. Today's mighty oak is yesterday's nut that held its ground. Rosa Parks. I don't think I need to get into who Rosa Parks was. That I think it is a quote that is symbolic not just of the strong Black women that Shubi and I mentioned today, but of all women. Let this Memory Monday serve as a reminder to women of all races, colors, and creeds that we are forces to be reckoned with, and that when we believe in ourselves and bolster each other up as opposed to cutting each other down, we achieve so much more, and it reaches, the roots of that reach far beyond our time and our community. It reaches out globally and through eras. And we must be strong and stand for something and what we believe in. And if that happens to change because we are educated differently, we have more information, more knowledge, then amen. But do not let yourself be swayed by ignorance or by hatred. So along with quotey quotes, you also got my final thoughts. Stay fearless, fam.